In the early 2010s, Google seemed almost unbeatable. A technological powerhouse with everything: YouTube, Android, Gmail, Maps. Any feature they launched could easily crush a small startup. And yet, inside this giant corporation worked a person who didn't look like a future industry icon. Not a top manager, not a star engineer, just a relatively unknown employee handling advertising tools while quietly dreaming of building products. His early thoughts about mobile photography sounded unusual at the time. Back then, smartphone cameras really were considered toys. And not only at Google, the entire tech world believed mobile photos were a temporary fad, not something capable of starting a revolution. But that blind spot created the opportunity for one of the most influential apps in history. That person was Kevin Systrom, and the story of Instagram is more than just a startup story. It's about how a product built with minimal resources, practically on weekends, became a global phenomenon. How an idea that no one believed in ended up more impactful than dozens of corporate initiatives. And how simplification, removing everything unnecessary, can be a weapon more powerful than any budget. The most striking part? Google already had Systrom inside. He walked the same hallways, ate in the same cafeteria, worked on projects far from anything resembling a future hit. But no one recognized the potential of someone who would soon reshape visual culture on the internet. Today, we'll explore how a small idea created by just two people changed the world, and why billion-dollar corporations sometimes lose to those who simply see the future a bit earlier.
To understand truly where Instagram came from, we have to go back to Kevin Systrom's childhood. Many of the ideas that later defined Instagram weren't born in Silicon Valley meeting rooms. They started on the home computer of a kid who spent hours modifying video games. At just 12 years old, Systrom was creating custom levels for Doom 2, tweaking textures, lighting, color palettes, and contrast. These early experiments were the first version of what would later become Instagram's signature feature: filters that could turn an ordinary image into something emotional and visually striking. He wasn't thinking about building products back then. He simply wanted the worlds he played in to look different, to reflect his own style. At 14, he experienced the emotional power of visual feedback. On a school forum, he posted his photos and drawings, receiving early likes long before the world used that word. People commented, praised his color choices, argued about his compositions. Years later, he would say that this was the moment he realized how strong the emotional connection created by images could be. And there's another important detail. Systrom understood early that technology wasn't just code. It was a tool for amplifying human emotion. This idea would later become the foundation of Instagram, a product not built around photos, but around the feelings those photos could trigger. In high school, he became serious about photography, collecting film cameras, experimenting with grain, vignettes, warm tones, and imperfect vintage aesthetics. What millions of Instagram users would later achieve with a single tap, he achieved manually, spending hours on each shot. These childhood experiments, early reactions, and tiny creative victories shaped the core principle that would define Instagram. People love beautiful stories delivered through simple visual expression.
After high school, Kevin Systrom enters Stanford, a place where future billionaires, investors, and engineers collide. But more importantly, this is where he encounters the discipline that would later become the essence of Instagram: user experience and the psychology behind digital products. One of the key turning points was a course called Human-Computer Interaction, a class funded by Google. Here, students learned how people interact with technology, how attention works, and why certain interfaces feel right, while others push users away. For Systrom, it was eye-opening. He realized that technology was ultimately about how the user feels, not about raw engineering. During this course, he created an early prototype of what would eventually evolve into the concept of stories. The assignment was simple: design a way for people to share moments with a small group of friends in real time. Systrom developed an experimental prototype where photos disappeared after a certain time and could be posted instantly. He didn't think much of it then. His professor said the idea was interesting but too experimental for the current market. And in 2005, smartphones were far too limited to make instant visual storytelling a mainstream product. But this forgotten student project, overlooked and abandoned, would become one of the foundational mechanics of Instagram nearly a decade later. The irony is striking. While the world argued about whether mobile photos even mattered, Systrom was already building the interaction patterns that billions of people would later use daily. Stanford gave him something crucial: the understanding that humans matter more than technology, that the interface can reshape human behavior. Years later, Systrom said that this was the moment he realized his mission: to make visual communication simple, intuitive, and emotionally powerful. These principles, attention, immediacy, minimalism, would become the DNA of Instagram long before Instagram actually existed. After graduating from Stanford, Kevin Systrom landed where thousands of young tech professionals dreamed of working: Google. At the time, getting a job at Google felt like securing a ticket to the future. Free meals, cutting-edge projects, legendary engineers. But reality turned out to be very different. Systrom wasn't placed in an engineering team. He wasn't building the next revolutionary product or designing new interfaces. Instead, he worked in a department focused on advertising tools, analyzing data, writing reports, and supporting features for Gmail and ad-related products. Important work, yes, but far from his dream of creating something of his own. This part of his journey is almost ironic. Despite having a strong sense for design and product thinking, Google didn't see him as someone capable of shaping breakthrough ideas. He asked about moving into engineering, taught himself coding at night, and even built small prototypes. But Google's internal structure was rigid. If you weren't hired as an engineer, you stayed where you were. In interviews, Systrom later admitted that his early fascination with mobile photography seemed odd to many colleagues. Back in 2008-2009, smartphone cameras were considered toys, not tools for serious creative work. His ideas felt experimental, interesting, but not valuable. And this lack of recognition eventually pushed him toward a difficult decision. As he put it, Google was an incredible place, but it wasn't the place where I could build my own product. Inside the massive corporate machine, he felt like someone standing in line, waiting for permission to innovate. Yet this period gave him something crucial: the understanding that if he wanted to create, truly create, he needed space where no one would tell him that his idea was too niche, too risky, or too small. After leaving Google, Systrom found himself in a rare situation: free, yet without a clear direction. He spent evenings building small prototypes, attending startup meetups, and, as he later said, searching for the spark. Soon he met investors from Baseline Ventures and Andreessen Horowitz, who saw something in him that others didn't. They handed him a small check, just tens of thousands of dollars, and said the words every founder dreams of: build something of your own. This is how Burbn was born, named after Systrom's favorite drink. Initially, it was a chaotic mix of everything trendy at the time: check-ins, plans, locations, achievements, messaging, friend meetups, and, as buried somewhere inside, photos. Burbn was overloaded, complicated, and confusing. It tried to be everything at once, and ended up being nothing. As Systrom and his future co-founder Mike Krieger tested the app, they saw alarming signs. Users tapped through dozens of screens, opened multiple menus, yet still had no idea how the app worked. But the truly shocking part revealed itself in the analytics. 95% of all user actions were photo-related. People were ignoring the very features Systrom had spent months building. Krieger later recalled, "We looked at the charts and thought, how is this possible? We built an entire social system and people just wanted to post pictures of their coffee." Burbn was dying. Users were confused. The interface felt overloaded, and the analytics showed a brutal truth. Everything Systrom spent months building was being ignored, except for one tiny feature: photos. But accepting this wasn't easy. Startups rarely fail because they lack ideas. They fail because founders become attached to the wrong ones. Systrom knew he had poured his soul into Burbn, but the product simply didn't work. Then Mike Krieger, his soon-to-be co-founder, said the words that changed everything. "If users only use photos, then we should only build photos." It sounded insane. Delete everything? A year of work? All the features they carefully designed? But the more they thought about it, the clearer it became. The only living part of Burbn was the photos. Everything else was dragging the product down. And so began one of the boldest product decisions in mobile history. They deleted 90% of the code, quite literally erased the entire app. Check-ins disappeared, plans vanished, locations, achievements, messages, gone. What remained were three things: a camera, a feed, and what would become Instagram's signature feature: filters that transformed ordinary snapshots into tiny pieces of art. The square format wasn't random. It mimicked Polaroid photographs, offered visual consistency, and helped compensate for the weak cameras of early smartphones. Some filters were born by accident, like X Pro 2, which emerged when Krieger accidentally misconfigured exposure settings, producing rich tones and cinematic contrast. With every removed feature, Burbn became simpler, cleaner, and closer to the idea Systrom had felt since childhood. An image is an emotion. This wasn't just a redesign. It was a philosophy. Do one thing, but make it beautiful. And that philosophy would open the door to a global audience of billions and reshape how the world communicates visually. After months of experimenting and making painful decisions, stripping Burbn down to its core, Systrom and Krieger finally felt something new. The product was breathing. They renamed it, simplified the interface, polished the filters, refined the feed. Most importantly, they created something no mobile app had at the time: a feeling of effortless beauty. The launch date was set for October 6, 2010. No one expected a miracle. There were no big announcements, no marketing campaigns, no PR budget. All they had was a tweet, a few friendly bloggers, and a belief that people wanted to share beautiful moments quickly and easily. In the first few minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly, users began to arrive. Dozens, then hundreds. And soon the growth became so explosive that the servers started crashing. Systrom was on the phone with Haruku trying to restart the infrastructure manually, while Krieger fixed bugs in real time. Within 24 hours, Instagram had 25,000 users, a number the team could hardly believe. 6 weeks later, the app reached its first million. For comparison, many major tech services of that era needed years to achieve such numbers. The secret was simple. Instagram made photos look better and made sharing them faster.
For the first time, people felt that mobile photography could be just as meaningful and sometimes even more expressive than traditional camera shots. In 2010, that was revolutionary. Tech journalists picked up the story almost instantly. Early celebrities joined, photographers praised the simplicity, and users loved how effortlessly beautiful their images became. As Systrom later said, "We wanted to build something simple. The world had bigger plans." And in those first 24 hours, it became clear, Instagram wasn't just another app. It was the beginning of a new visual era. And that philosophy would open the door to a global audience of billions and reshape how the world communicates visually.
Instagram's explosive rise surprised not just users, it blindsided the tech giants, especially Google, a company that owned Android, dominated the web, and was believed to be capable of building absolutely anything. But that confidence was exactly what caused their defeat. At the time, Google was focused on large, ecosystem-level products: Google+, Picasa, web social layers, massive integration projects. Mobile apps were seen as additions, not as the core of the digital experience. Smartphone cameras were considered interesting features, not the foundation of future communication. As a result, Google had no team tasked with building a simple, lightweight, mobile-first photo app. Their products were big, strategic, and painfully slow to evolve. Instagram was the opposite. 2 people, 1 server, and almost zero delay between idea and execution. While Google held meetings, Instagram grew. While Picasa updated once a month, Instagram released new filters every week. While Google+ tried to become a social network, Instagram already was one, without the unnecessary complexity. As the app's growth skyrocketed, it became clear this wasn't a trend, it was a threat. Twitter moved first, offering around $500 million to acquire Instagram. Systrom declined. Too many restrictions. Too little creative freedom. Google eventually made an offer too, but they were late. Instagram was already on Mark Zuckerberg's radar. Facebook acted differently, quickly, quietly, and personally. Zuckerberg met with Systrom face-to-face and promised something no other company could. Instagram would remain independent, keep its culture, and keep its creative direction. That promise became the deciding factor. In April 2012, Facebook acquired Instagram for $1 billion. The shocking part: Google could have paid more, but they didn't lose on price, they lost on timing. They simply failed to recognize that mobile photography would become the new language of the internet. Instagram proved one thing: the speed of a startup beats the inertia of a giant.
After Instagram joined Facebook, many expected it to disappear inside the massive corporation, losing its identity and independence. But the opposite happened. Instagram grew so quickly that even Facebook struggled to keep up with the pace. Instagram's real power wasn't that it was a photo app. Its power was that it became a new form of communication. People no longer wrote long posts. They told stories through images. Filters created mood. Short captions replaced paragraphs. Instagram became the language of emotion. Simple, instant, universal. Between 2012 and 2014, photographers, bloggers, artists, and brands migrated to the platform. For the first time, ordinary people could become influential simply because of how they saw the world, not because of status or connections. Instagram democratized visual expression, and it changed culture. The first influencers emerged. Cafes and restaurants redesigned interiors for Instagram moments. Fashion brands rewired entire campaigns around visual storytelling. Even tourism shifted. Millions began choosing destinations based on a single photo seen in someone's feed. Instagram's algorithm amplified this effect. It was one of the first platforms to introduce an interest-based feed, where engagement mattered more than posting time. This made the app deeply personal. Users saw content that resonated with them emotionally. Celebrities played their part too. As Hollywood actors, musicians, and athletes adopted Instagram, the platform became ingrained in global pop culture. Iconic moments followed. The first celebrity posts, the first million-like photo, the first viral challenges. Instagram didn't just become successful. It became a cultural phenomenon, shaping the aesthetics of an entire decade, transforming marketing, journalism, fashion, and even politics. And it all started.
At first glance, it seems unbelievable. The man who created Instagram reshaped global visual culture and built a platform used by billions decides to walk away at the peak of its success. But Kevin Systrom's story isn't about power or money. It's about a person who always valued creativity over corporate influence. After Facebook acquired Instagram, Mark Zuckerberg kept his promise for years. The product remained independent, the team autonomous, and Systrom was still leading its evolution. But as Facebook grew more monetized, more algorithm-driven, more competitive, the pressure slowly increased. New demands appeared, advertising integrations, business tools, attention optimization, the battle with Snapchat, stories, reels, and a constant push for growth. Instagram was shifting from a minimalist photo app into a powerful social machine. For users, this was evolution. For Systrom, it was erosion of the original vision. He often said Instagram should remain a place of inspiration, not a battleground for attention. Over time, creative tension emerged between him and Facebook's leadership. Systrom and Krieger wanted slow, thoughtful refinement. Facebook wanted scale and aggressive expansion. The two philosophies drifted apart. In the fall of 2018, Kevin Systrom announced he was leaving Instagram. The tech world was stunned. He didn't criticize Facebook, didn't blame anyone. He simply said he wanted to rediscover curiosity and build something new again. After leaving, Systrom co-created Artifact, a news app built around the same principles he always valued: simplicity, clarity, and emotional relevance. It seems he's still searching for that pure creative spark he once found when building Instagram. The irony is clear. The man who created a platform for billions stepped away because he cared less about scale and more about the integrity of an idea.
Instagram didn't beat Google because it had more resources or better technology. It won because it saw what the giants missed. People wanted simplicity, beauty, and emotion instantly, in one tap. Google built big systems, complex platforms, strategic ecosystems. Instagram did one thing, but did it perfectly. It didn't try to be everything. It just became right. Systrom didn't think about technology first. He thought about people. How do you make a photo beautiful? How do you make an app effortless? How do you make communication human? That philosophy became the weapon. A tiny startup moved faster, lighter, and more human than a corporation with endless resources. In the end, Google didn't lose to a person. Google lost to an idea. An idea simpler, faster, and stronger than any strategy.